remarks and understanding a little more about what We Serve is doing, let me congratulate you. It's wonderful, wonderful work. And through my years of working with the late Reverend Leon Solomon, I started out in the 1970s. We founded OIC in Philadelphia in 1964. In 1970, one of the past leaders of Nigeria read about the OIC program. The significance of the program is similar to what you're talking about, helping people to help themselves. You know, there's this African proverb saying, when you feed a man, he eats for a day, but when you teach him how to fish, he can eat forever. So this is the premise of the OIC program, and my friend Mujahid and his wife have worked with OIC for the years also, but it was founded in 1970, and OIC are self-help training centers. They're all around the world, and my first experience with Africa was through the OIC program, and that's where I went there. And they're vocational training centers dealing with people who have maybe no skills or low skills and provide them with skills in many areas. And now they have about, I guess, about 20 OIC training centers in about 25 countries around the world. One of the most successful was in Poland, by the way. Reverend Solomon, after the wall came down in Poland, he went to meet Black Maritza, and they began, and it's one of the great success stories of the OIC movement. And that's how I got to Russia and India to talk about developing OIC programs, self-help programs there myself. So that's another story for another day. Okay? Let me first begin by saying to you, and I'm sure that most of you know, but know this, but let me trouble you for a moment by restating it. First and foremost, before I begin, Africa, as you know, is not a country. It's a continent. 53, 54 countries. The continent is 3.5 size larger than the entire United States. We can put the United States in it 3 times and still have room left over. There's 1 billion people plus, and the middle class in Africa is growing as fast as the middle class in China. That's the economic paradigm. We have had historically, as you know, through a very long history with Africa, we the United States. Clearly the history of the relationship that dates back to the institution of Atlantic slave trade. There's always been slavery since the beginning of time, so to speak, but as depicted in the Bible. But the Atlantic slave trade has been characterized as the most inhuman institution created by man, because it actively created and perpetuated an economics enterprise that was built on the backs of exchange and creating human beings as property. It is reported that millions of black people came from all over Africa, but particularly in West Africa. They were captured and sent to the New World, and called slaves there. And in Africa, the lands were conquered and colonized by the foreign powers, and the people of Africa, both in the New World and in Africa, were treated in the most inhuman ways that we can imagine. Currently, we have been engaged in a process to try to correct that history. Always, that's what we're doing. It's the root of racism, segregation, and many other problems that we have. But since being here for over 500 years, from the very beginning of slavery, black people have been trying to get back to Africa in some form. You may be aware of the Back to Africa movement by the great Marcus Garvey, who has now been, I think one year Congress has forgiven him for being I guess a subversive might be the word the term might want to use at that time. But he organized over 3 million black people in this Back to Africa movement. Also, we have here in the United States, we have I should say, the first president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, went to Lincoln University, did his graduate PhD work at the University of Pennsylvania. The first president of Nigeria graduated from Lincoln University. So we've had a long history in our community here, but also with Africa. So we have a lot that has been involved here, and I think you're going to see and hear more about that history evolving as we go forward and put it on this. For Nkrumah, being here, he stayed here in the States for 10 years, and being here, one of the great things he found out was the injustice that existed and the principles of democracy that he struggled for when he went home, helped to lead in 1957 Ghana to be one of the first independent nations on the continent of Africa. There were other independent ones like Ethiopia that were never colonized, but Ghana became one of the first, one of the most important ones. And to this day, if you haven't, Moody can tell you, if you haven't been to Ghana, it's the place to go. It is the rising star. And I'll tell you, when President Obama went to Africa, his first trip was to Ghana because what it has accomplished in terms of the market economy, in terms of democracy and governance, it's a well-run country, and it's really sure it's a model to many others. So I just share that with you to look at. One of the things I wanted to point out to you is that we now have currently going on something called the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. This is a U.S.-Africa bilateral trade agreement. And next month, June, Secretary Clinton will be hosting AGOA, Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA forum in Lusaka, Zambia. Her and all of the heads of states, many trade ministers from around the world will be there for about a week to discuss AGOA, to the enhancement of it, and to talk about how they can improve the entry of products manufactured and services in Africa to the United States. So it's the AGOA forum. And the AGOA basically is a trade regime that allows up to 3,000 products to come into the U.S. market duty-free. Unfortunately, when it was first passed several years ago, many of the African countries focused on textiles because it was less difficult for them to do those textiles and to achieve the quotas that the United States allowed for them. But there's over 3,000 products that could come into the United States duty-free. And as a consequence, this trade regime is being revisited, and we'll probably hear more to talk about as we go forward. But it is one of the major things that we have a bilateral trade with the U.S. and Africa. And we're now looking at doing some additional things with AGOA that we couldn't do before. Like one of the things I heard the professor talk about is venture capital, helping create venture capital so that we can move things to the next level. All right? And I wanted to stop here for a moment and talk about some of the humanitarian things and not simply business. We have had United States, I think our aid program between the United States and Africa, it's probably several billion dollars depending upon how you aggregate the numbers. But one of the big programs I just mentioned is the President's Emergency Program for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR, P-E-P-F-A-R. That was created under President George Bush. It's a $15 billion program to allow NGOs, colleges and universities, and other hospitals and other institutions to work together to deal with problems related to HIV/AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis, and other aspects of it. PEPFAR still exists. In fact, the White House has an Office of Global AIDS Advisor now. And these funds are used to do several things. In collaboration with the host country, they would do a proposal around a project to present to U.S. PEPFAR for funding. Some have collaborated with pharmaceutical companies like Abbott. Some has collaborated with other pharmaceutical companies that are manufacturing HIV/AIDS drugs, antiretrovirals. I mean, you're only limited by your own creativity, but the issue is that there is a fund of resources there, and some of it is to do treatment, some of it is to do outreach to educate the community, and some of it is to work with hospitals and universities in partnerships to build capacity in these countries that have, particularly in Southern Africa, where there's a significant epidemic of HIV/AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis. So for We Serve, just go to their website and look at it. It might give you some ideas of the kind of things they're doing, and it will not be lost on me. Waste time looking at that to be good for you. I'll advise you to look at one more institution, that's dealing with global health, and that is the Global AIDS, also AIDS for malaria, and tuberculosis. It's in Geneva. And it is a fund that is more connected to the United Nations. The UN collects resources from all of the countries around the world and uses those resources to work with various diseases and whatnot in the developing countries. As I said, it's based in Geneva, but it has regional offices around. And if you go to their website, you'll find some things. But that's another one where the paradigm is shift from we're going to do for you. We're going to go to that host country, collaborate with maybe the Minister of Health, and say that we can do this, and that proposal will be presented to the institution. And also to make sure that local communities are engaged. In every country, they have a local coordinating committee. So for those of you who are in Gambia, or even Mozambique for that matter, you should find out, probably through your Ministry of Health or the minister himself, find out who that coordinating committee is, because that proposal must come through and collaborate with that coordinating committee. And it's happening big time. One of the things I found that many people in the host country may have great ideas, but the proposal process is rather rigorous, and the capacity, skill sets in some of the countries are just not there. And you'll find some of the countries going outside and technical experts to come in just to write the proposal. So, you know, that's an opportunity. So I just share those things with you. And as I go through the rest of our remarks, I will probably reference you whatever you know there. There's another big initiative going on right now, in both around the world and in our country. This young lady, I don't want to embarrass her, but this is Miss Anjali Shirani. She is a special assistant to Councilman Blackwell. She's my buddy and trade partner. I'm taking her to Brazil, which we will be doing a project in Africa. So I'm getting her internationalized. So this is another big initiative I want you to be aware of, and it's extremely important. And that's the Global Diaspora Initiative. The global community has examined the remittances that communities send back to their respective countries, like to India, China, Jamaica. And one of the things the World Bank found out in a report about 5 years ago was that Africans remit nearly $40 billion a year to their various countries. $40 billion. So we're now trying to dig out how to use these resources in the development initiative that takes place in those countries. I'm doing a project with the Western Union and USAID. 2 years ago, they developed something called the Africa Diaspora Marketplace, where they have provided several $1 million to African entrepreneurs to participate in a business planning contest, and they can win between $25,000 and up to $100,000 to invest in their business enterprise that will take place in Africa. Now, these African diaspora entrepreneurs could live anywhere, mostly from the United States, but their project needs to be in Africa, or their business enterprise needs to be in Africa. It was so successful, they had over 7 million contestants last year. So we're now beginning to develop Africa Diaspora Marketplace 2. It's in development right now, and we will double the number of participants in the contest and invest in another venture capital fund. When we get to the entrepreneurial aspects of this venture capital is very, very important for some of the things you're doing as well as others. In addition, the World Bank has had an Africa Diaspora Initiative. It gets to the points that you were making earlier, working with Africa so they can help themselves, so the Africans have African solutions to African problems. And so the World Bank has a program called the Africa Diaspora Initiative, and they have taken theirs out in Washington, but also into various places, because it is the second largest donor or funder of projects on the continent of Africa. The first is the World Bank is the first, the African Development Bank is the second. But they fund about $8 to $9 billion a year in development projects on the African continent, and the African Development Bank is about 5. So it's a very good opportunity for funding development projects and all types of things. I would suggest that the research team here look at the World Bank website on Africa and see the many things they're doing, some brilliant, some not so brilliant. Some people argue that the World Bank just messed up $50 billion a year for the last 50 years dealing with Africa, so they didn't know what to do. They went and said, hey, we're going to do this for you. They moved the people out of the way. The people had no engagement. Even in the most recent controversy, the pipeline that was built for over $3 billion US dollars, funded through the World Bank, they uprooted hundreds of thousands of people and moved them out of the way of this pipeline so they can build the pipeline for the oil that's put out. That was, not only was it horrendous, but they're still suffering from that policy today. And hopefully they learned enough to keep that from happening again. But these are like development initiatives that people don't know going in. And let's mark it up to ignorance as opposed to intent to destroy the lives of millions, literally millions of people. So, but I think they're getting better record for what they're doing most recently, and we are still have yet to learn more about the development things that the World Bank. So both these development initiatives are very important and are expanding. In fact, on May 17th, 18th, and 19th, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton will be hosting at the Department of State a diaspora conference. She's inviting not just African diaspora, all of the diasporas, African, Asian, Irish, Italian, because of the importance that the diaspora bring to link to their home country or their respective countries. And it's a very prominent aspect of development policy now. And if you're in that development policy dialogue, you could look at Secretary Clinton's website also at the U.S. Department of State to see what they're doing. I also for Secretary Clinton say that she's is so entrenched on this issue of women in development that she has selected a special ambassador in the Department of State for women and girls. She has a special program that I'm doing some work with now with one of my clients to help expand access to education to women and young girls. If you've been to Africa, those of you know that women are the beasts of burden in Africa. They give birth to the babies, they go out the next day, they farm the farm, they carry the baby on their back, they do everything. And it's just unfortunate, but that's cultural paradigm is going to change. And you're going to see the winds of change. The first president, the most recent president-elect in Liberia is a woman, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. And in Rwanda, after the unfortunate destruction of hundreds of thousands of people, because there's no men left, the women run half of the government. They run the parliament. They have very high-level positions, and you'll find that happening more and more throughout Africa, and of course in other parts of the world. So it's a thing that I suggest you watch, but how do you get them ready? You talk about the next generation. I heard you say, how do you get this next generation ready for leadership? You have to prepare them, you have to train them, and that's the work that's going on, not only with Secretary Clinton, but with others. I'm going to mention a few more things, and then I'm going to try to sit down and let you ask questions. Unfortunately for the United States, due to our financial meltdown, we have become probably the scourge of the world at some points of it. But don't be dismayed. We have now, if you read the financial papers, it's been clearly recognized that the developing countries will lead the United States and the West out of this economic malaise. If the U.S. grows by 3%, the economy grows by 3%, next year we'll be lucky. Everyone will be ecstatic. And Europe is projected to have no growth. China, with the unfortunate nuclear disaster and the tsunami, we don't know where that's going. But the idea is the developing world, at best, may grow at 3%, and that's optimistic. Looking at Africa and other developing countries, the growth is projected to be from 5% to 12%. China alone is going to grow at 10% if they do nothing. Nigeria is going to be 8 to 9%. Ghana and the lower end of some of these countries will be around 4.5%, 5%. So if you read the Financial Times or the business journals, I have some stuff that Business Week did and the McKinsey group did on Africa and growth development. So it's the place to be. It's the place to be, and it's the emerging markets will lead this out of this struggle. And you just may have seen, I think about a week ago, that the BRICS, Brazil, China, India, Russia, and South Africa has been added to one of them. So it's BRICS now, and these countries will help. I just got back from Brazil not too long ago. I'm doing a project where we're taking some Afro-Brazilian students from there, bringing them to Philly and taking them back. But it is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. That's also the reason why President Obama went to Brazil recently. I don't know how much press he got here, but it's a phenomenal visit, and we can continue to expect great things out of Brazil. South Africa has the 12th largest stock market in the world. If you go to South Africa, if you get to Mozambique, you got to go to Joburg. It's like cheating. It's not even Africa. It's like going to New York. Plus the cities are cleaner than the United States. But you have to experience it because there is this notion that there's, unfortunately for many of us, that's Africans, a bunch of wild people running around in the streets and killing each other. And while there are tragedies, unfortunately, as you see what's going on in North Africa right now, but the North Africa issue is not unique. It's like, and we fight a revolution for the right to be self-government and democracy, and that's what you're seeing that's taking place in North Africa now. Those young people are rebelling against, and unfortunately, there's some of these dictators we backed. They are rebelling against the status quo and saying, we don't want it. We had enough. It's over. We're not staying. By the way, in sub-Saharan Africa, 17 countries are having democratic elections this year. Most recent going on right now is the Nigerian elections, where it's highly recognized that the presidential election that took place last week was one of the most fairest in history. But you still have elections coming up this year in a number of other countries, and we're looking forward to a very positive result of those elections. So we have some good things coming on about self-government. On the growth side, let me share this with you since you guys had some medical. I was at a medical forum, and the growth for the pharmaceutical companies is not here, it's flat. You know, the patents are running out, the generics, I mean, everything is happening. So where are they going? They're looking to the developing world for two things. One, this new market. Because as these economies increase, people tend to eat better. They have Starbucks and McDonald's will go in, and guess what happens after that? Obesity. So the pharmaceutical companies have done us, they can tell you by year, by country, the types of diseases that people would develop by virtue of their diet, and they know where they're going in. I mean, that homework has already been done. If I saw it, you know how late it is, okay? If they should have been there. But I was at a World Bank meeting, and it's done. So the pharmacy industries are saying that growth markets in Africa will grow about 40% a year. That's what the projections are. And unfortunately, as I say, the rest of the bad stuff goes with McDonald's, Starbucks, diabetes, cancer. It's going to proliferate, and that's where they see the market, growth market. Don't listen to me. You go to the Pharmaceutical Association of America. It's on their website. Maybe one of the good things that we're witnessing now, one of the great transfers of wealth, is oil. While we're going to end up paying $5, $6 an hour a gallon for oil, for many African countries and developing countries, it's the greatest thing that can happen. We have recently, while Nigeria, which is the largest oil producer in Africa, Angola is the second one behind it, but they've just found oil in the Ivory Coast, Ghana, Liberia, Guinea. They haven't even begun to dig it yet. Uganda. So much oil in the world that I don't know why prices need to go up, but I guess they're going to make a bit out of this. I know my president is talking about it, but something's going to happen. But there's no dearth of oil on the planet. I mean, clearly it's a finite resource, but where they're finding it at, and the oil find they had in Ghana, I don't know if you've seen this video, they thought it was just a trickle oil. Then they began to test it. They were like 3 billion barrels of oil in Ghana alone. It's something around the Gulf of Guinea, where Nigeria is, and they're finding this oil and these natural resources there that are becoming very, very prominent. Of course, I started there because you have some of the most essential commodities in the world in Africa. The cell phone that you have would not exist if it were not for Coltrane and DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. Gold, bauxite, diamonds, you name it, is there. It's just been underdeveloped. So we are certainly watching how U.S. and our trade policy will help to contribute to the development of Africa. And on that part, let me just say that we are dealing with a perception that there's nothing there. And that's okay, because the Chinese and Indians are in India there. The Chinese spend $100 billion a year in Africa right now. It is expected to grow. India is close behind with $50 billion invested, and they seem to have a better understanding of the development process and the collaboration that can take place in this underdeveloped country. Walmart, by the way, just spent $3.4 billion in South Africa to buy a partnership in Mass Park. And when they asked Walmart, why did you do that? They say, being consumers on the continent of Africa, what are we doing? They're moving it out of South Africa and to other countries around the world. So many of us are slow to understand it, but somebody's looking at it. One of the criticisms about the Chinese development effort in Sub-Saharan Africa is that certainly they need to grow, but their development paradigms say, okay, we're going to come build a bridge for you. They bring in the Chinese team, they build the bridge, and then they leave. So there's no transference of skills or knowledge or anything into the local communities, no capacity to use it to maintain it. I just got back from Liberia last month, and one of the truth of that is the Chinese told the Liberians, we're going to build you a hospital. And they built them a hospital and left. That's all it is, a big empty hospital there. Okay? So I'm sure that many of the African countries are learning more and more about this, the aspect of it, because in Liberia is unique because they just come to a 15-year civil war, and everything was destroyed. Everything. I'm sharing with the provost and down there. Next, in June, Councilwoman Blackwell and I will be bringing the Minister of Education from Liberia and Angola here to Philadelphia to do an education roundtable. The United States government alone will spend about $80 million in refurbishing the Liberian education system. And many colleges and universities around the United States are forming consortiums to help do that work. By the way, Drexel has an edge. The Minister of Planning of Liberia did his undergraduate work at Drexel and his graduate work at Penn State University. So I told him I was going to bring Drexel back, kicking and screaming, to do some work in Liberia. So that's something which we can talk about moving forward. So this, what they just recently, USAID in Liberia just recently released an $18 million contract to set up centers of excellence within the country's higher education system. And they have to teach. They have to educate teachers all over, civil engineers, you name it, they have to do it. At the same time, they have to take the massive unemployed youth and provide them with skills on the quick side. So there's a lot to be, there's a significant challenge there that has to be dealt with. What I wanted to do now is just maybe, if we have time, I will just stop there because there's a lot more I can talk. Like you said, I've been doing this for 50 years, so I can do this all day, every day. So let me just refer to stop there, and you decide whether you want to ask some questions now or at some other point. Okay.
Thank you very much, Chairman Strotter. Any questions for Chairman Strotter?
Oh, well, I have a question. You mentioned before some of the less than successful projects the World Bank has done in Africa. So like if you were, if tomorrow they put you in charge, like what would you do? Like if you could do one thing.
I think one of the key things I would do is what you're doing here. You have to educate the people as quickly as possible. As I say, the challenge is the regular college education this massive bulge of unemployed young people need attention right now. They are currently a threat to what we call civil society, because in some countries like Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, they've been suffering in wars, and that's all they know is killing and robbing and stealing. So I would see how we can take this skill transfer. I know you were talking about a skill technology and training. That's the quickest thing we can do. Training. If we have some technology, expedite training and skill sets, I think that would be one area that is not big. I know that's one area in total demand. I can take y'all to any country, talk to any minister of education, and they will say, what can you do now? Now, the education system itself is another aspect, and I think I'm advocating that Drexel and other schools in the university will come together. Maybe we can organize a consortium where we can go to countries that are in need to help enhance the education system. But we have to look at education as part of the development paradigm in these countries, because if we don't, they will really continue to move in and do that. Now, that said, there's so many practical projects that we serve that you're already doing that you can continue, because some of them you have to test out and scale them up. One of the things I was engaged in, I wasn't engaged in it, but I was advising a guy. He has this great developing California, this great technology for biomass, and he's wondering why nobody in Africa wants to go buy this thing and bring it so they can produce biomass. But what he didn't calculate was the biomass that this tree doing out there, it may not work there. And he found out when I took him to Liberia, and he's like 150,000 pounds of waste, and where's that waste, and what kind of, he hadn't done that kind of research. So it's a great machine in the city there. It may be one of those technologies that we need to bring in and help commercialize. But it's that kind of thinking. People get great ideas, they want to save the world, but the cost of that could be phenomenal. And one of the other things I would suggest you look at, and you may have in technology, I'm sure you have the technology, is super engineers. In Liberia, almost all the roads were destroyed. So they now have to develop some process to quickly develop roads and put assets on asphalt on it to last. Why roads? Well, it's essential to communications and to markets. Farmers can't get to the marketplace, they can't get their products exported out of the country if they can't get it from the farm to the market areas. And so roads are a very critical part of it. We often overlook it, but it's a fundamental access point to get to markets and have goods and services and products get to the places they buy. So there's a lot of, as I said, a lot of small technologies that can help by modeling, testing them out, and then scaling them up. But you have a laboratory for doing that, and as pointed out here, you got all this great brain power, to help us do it. So I'm hopeful that as I learn more about what we do, maybe there's some way that we can collaborate and we can take you to a few of those countries to say, let's test it out. Did I get help out? All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Hang on, Chairman Strong. On behalf of Drexel University, we'd like to give this a momentum as an appreciation to the cause.
Thank you.
So again, I'm from Uganda. I left Uganda when I was very young, and I had the opportunity to go back after 32 years. And as Chairman Strotter said, he's absolutely right. It is a different world there, and it's a whole, generation since I went back. So I saw many changes, and I was at the airport on my way back, and it was amazing to see what used to be one little building, probably smaller than the room we're in as the airport, transformed into a whole, huge building with electronics, with the latest and greatest computers. And I go there because I thought I was supposed to leave that day. And so I go there and I have no tickets, no seats. I'm like, but here's my confirmation, I'm supposed to leave today. And the woman sitting there, this amazing computer, looks at me and she says, TIA. I'm like, wait, what? And she says, TIA. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you had a stroke and you're so calm about it? Is there anything I can do to help? I thought, she wasn't feeling well and she couldn't use the computers. And she just like looks at me like I'm crazy. And then there's a gentleman next to me, and he says, TIA, this is Africa. Welcome to Africa. And this is what happens if the computers don't work and you can't get out till tomorrow. I'm sorry, TIA, that's the way it is. So that's some of the experiences that I'm sure you'll have. And speaking of exactly that, as you all know, Mr. Kebabaji was supposed to be here today as well. And unfortunately, he had some visa issues, again, something that happens. But he has sent an address that I would like to share with you all today, as he requested me to do. Mr. Kebabaji is the Chief Executive Officer of Suleiman Juncan General Hospital in Guyam, the Gambia, West Africa. To the University Provost, Dean, the Director of the Biomedical Engineering, Science and Health Systems, other faculty heads and professors, distinguished and most honored personalities here present, concerned personalities in human development, students and interested persons here present, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols respectively, duly and honorably observed. I am deeply grieved for not being able to be physically here this morning to bring greetings from the Gambia and to be able to whisper these little words of gratitude and appreciation for a job well done. Believe me, I had been dreaming for this day and had looked forward for such an opportunity to brush shoulders with highly profile persons I simply call people of substance. My desire to meet you people cannot be overemphasized, for such a situation would have offered many here present today not only the opportunity to put a face on this very fruitful and realistic biomedical engineering outreach project, but to also have one-on-one discussions with me on its merits and a way forward. However, make no mistake, for I'm very much in spirit here with you, and is very much pleased to learn that this speech will be read to this august body. I am fully aware that this would not suffice or be able to replace my physical presence, but will be a compromise. Mr. Chairman, Drexel and Suleiman Juncan General Hospital had successfully, over the years, managed to establish a strategic relationship that had been characterized by realistic, individual-centered, operational plans and logistic undertakings. Students' quest to venture out into the unknown for what I call the other world experience, and had successfully made a difference in the lives of others, especially to the less endowed. This undertaking bred cross-cutting benefits that had yielded far-reaching consequences on both sides of the divide. My Blessed Mother, may her soul rest in perfect peace, once told me that even though oceans and seas do have multitude of waters, they still do not reject the waters from less endowed zones. This is to simply illustrate the fact that this project is and continues to be a win-win situation for both institutions. The project, therefore, had unveiled two opportunities. One, it was able not only to unlock the innate potentials of my trainees, but also enhanced their capacity. The trainees have now not only developed a much broader sense of responsibility and hope, but had also encouraged the hospital management to come up with a planned preventative maintenance policy. Mr. Chairman, working in a resource-constrained place can invoke and encourage ingenuity, improvising, a sense of purpose, economic and judicious utilization of scarce resources. Above all, it may also expose one the opportunity of putting the human element and culture in the forefront in problem solving. Suleiman Solomon Junction General Hospital is a rural referral health facility situated some 105 kilometers south of the capital city, Banjul, and capital city Banjul, and we serve a populace of not less than 150,000 people. In this part of the country, transportation, especially vehicles, have always been a problem. So patients mostly access our services through alternative means of transport, like donkey, horse, and ox-drawn carts. Conscious and cognizant of this, my management came up with some strategies aimed at mitigating not only the transport problem, but also the provision of better accessibility and availability of the health services to the patients. Key villages were identified, and our trekking health team visits these sites on a monthly basis to immunize children and take care of all maternal cases and adult male issues. Secondly, we have established trekking sites, and we use solar power in these satellite clinics in our service delivery. So we are now in the habit of using some form of technology to advance our drive to deliver effective services with quality assured. The Faculty of Engineering residents at Drexel has got a huge role to play in our quest and mandate to the servicing and maintenance of our medical equipment. One sure way to achieve this is to help upgrade the skills and knowledge of my biomedical staff through training and also the provision of the required tools to do the job. We have been enjoying over the years volunteer residents from Drexel coming over to repair and service our medical equipment. This effort has done well with recognition and appreciation by both management and staff of Solomon Junction General Hospital. And I would like at this juncture to register our gratitude, our appreciation for such timely interventions by the resident volunteers. We do therefore look forward to having this collaboration nurtured and strengthened. Mr. Chairman, Madam Director, I would like to conclude by making the following suggestions to this august audience, but most specifically to the Faculty of Biomedical Engineering for their kind perusal and consideration. 1. Make the coming of the residents regular and on rotation basis through the sponsorship of Drexel. 2. Come up with a training module for my staff and have them certified by Drexel University. 3. Provision of a maintenance kit box. 4. Signing of a memorandum of understanding between Drexel and Solomon Junction General Hospital. Mr. Chairman, Madam Director, I am very much optimistic that with the establishment of the aforementioned, both parties will greatly derive benefits and a huge difference would be realized. I thank you very much for your kind attention, and God bless this partnership. With that, and as we move into creating more partnerships and more opportunities for We Serve students to go out in different areas, we're looking into Haiti, we're looking into Benin, we of course have established sites in Mozambique and the Gambia. I would like to have you now hear from Dr. Montgomery as a doctor who went down as a representative of the We Serve program to share his experiences, and then you'll also hear from Caitlin from a student perspective. So I'd like to invite Dr. Montgomery.
Drexel Institute of Technology without at least having helpers.
Let's see if we can get it going.
All right. think I'm in the way.
That's okay.
Mostly, so first of all, thank you for inviting me, and thank you also for having a program of such inspiration and such vision. In fact, I would not be here if it weren't for the program. And in fairness, just as Shirin said and as Banu said, the inspiration comes from our students. It comes from our students in the medical school. It comes from our students at the university. I have saved on my cell phone. I won't embarrass Kate by playing it. But we were talking about her desire to do work abroad and to do service. And she came back from one of the We Serve meetings, and she said, "This is a great new program, and it's very organized. And we're going to do training. We're going to go to Gambia." And I said, "Wonderful." And then I quickly went to look up where Gambia was, because I didn't know where Gambia was. And so my slide is first off, not only the copy of the article that was very nicely published, which we took several copies with us, but also a picture of Caitlin, because she was my inspiration for going to Gambia. I had previously worked in the Dominican Republic, both at the university teaching and then doing work in the hospital there, and we had scheduled a medical mission to Bolivia, and Caitlin was going to accompany me, but because of logistic things, as we heard, not only just in Africa, the mission was canceled, so we were unable to go. And so I was prepared to do an international mission, but the reason to go to Gambia was because of We Serve and because of Caitlin. And I think the Chairman Strawther said so many things which I jotted down on the back of your card so I would remember. And I have a few slides, and when you give medical talks, particularly if you do OBGYN, you have to be careful what slides you show in public forum. So I was reviewing some of the slides, particularly the ones that were sent me by the medical colleagues that I met in Gambia, and many of them were not appropriate for non-medical audience. I do have, at the very end of the presentation, a couple of pictures which one of my colleagues, Dr. Azada, sent me. So I'll try not to be too visual. There are some, I had the opportunity to both go to the President's inauguration and to sit with our new President as part of the Strategic Planning Commission. And you know, the President has really talked about the globalization of Drexel. This is just one of the ways in which we're being globalized. And I think this is a wonderful way to do it. And I'm sorry that Kim is not here, because he is a wonderful individual who you will immediately become engaged with, as I did. I was in fact going to pick him up from the airport last night and host him in my home for a few days. But he, as you said, had visa problems. At the President's inauguration, Provost Greenberg, who has also been a strong supporter of the program, decided that he would spontaneously make a literary quote and quoted Blake, but I won't quote Blake. But I will tell you that what's happening in Gambia, particularly with Kiva, is very analogous to a book which is called The Pillars of the Earth, in which an entire community is centered around a single institution. Now, in that book, it was about a cathedral that was being built, and in this case, it's the hospital, which was just exactly as the chairman said. It was built, plopped down in the middle of rural Africa with no road, and left empty, without any equipment. And there was a World Bank meeting that was about 20 miles down the road at the President's village home, and somebody from the World Bank came and said, "What's this, big building doing in the middle of rural Africa?" And Kiva managed to have a conversation, and about a year later, $1 million worth of equipment came from the World Bank, so that actually it's one of the examples in which he has served as a lightning rod for his community. It is a source of education. It's a source of occupation. It is certainly cultural, and it raises the standard of living in the entire community. Examples, he bartered using a small corner of the area of the hospital building to rent to the cell phone tower companies, so they could then have cell phone towers. They pay him diesel fuel so he could run the generator to keep the hospital going. I was lucky enough to be there while the hospital generator was working, which allowed us a few hours of electricity a day. And then after I left, then Caitlin was there for another couple of months without the generator, and so she learned to live with candles and daylight. So we had an interesting opportunity. Drexel College of Medicine does have other connections internationally, and again, echoing what Chairman Strother said, one of my faculty members, Dr. Michelle Follin, who is the Associate Vice Dean for Women's Health Research, has had a long-standing program in Nigeria, where we have six centers where she has brought a program of cervical cancer screening to Nigeria, which didn't previously exist, and this is in conjunction with National Institute of Health, Exxon Company, and those programs are currently existing and ongoing. So Nigeria has a much stronger cervical cancer screening program. There is essentially no cervical cancer screening program in Gambia. I also agree that what we can provide the most to the Gambian community is our ability to help with education, and that education can be mutual education. One example is that I treated more women with malaria in a single day at a Trek clinic than I treated in my entire career. And so the opportunity to send young physicians and not so young physicians to a part of the world where they could learn from the physicians and the educators and the teachers there how to treat people with certain conditions that we otherwise would not see. A sustainable partnership, a sustainable collaboration needs to be bidirectional. So it's not simply that we go and, in this case, teach a man to fish, but he also teaches us how to do something else that we then bring back with us. And so I think that Drexel has an opportunity. After being inspired by Caitlin to go, Kiva sent me an email which said, and when you come, we'll have lots of interesting gynecologic cases for you to do. And I said, well, okay, I've never been to the hospital, they don't have electricity, they don't have running water, they don't have anesthesia, I have no idea what they have, but I think one of the worst things that I could do would be to go over with a scalpel and decide that I was going to operate on people that I've not met before and who I can't follow up after. So even though I thought it was disappointing to them that a professor of surgery from the United States was going to come and not operate or not plan on doing lots of cases, I didn't think that was, in fact, the best use of my time. So what instead I did was to bring a 16-gigabyte flash drive and filled it full of 500 lectures that I got in a voluntary basis from the College of Medicine and the School of Nursing related to women's health and also primary care. So I asked any faculty member who would voluntarily give me their lecture, as opposed to very specifically to download the Drexel curriculum, which is one of the things that we're working on becoming global with. But I had lectures that we give medical students and nursing students and PA students, videotapes of interesting cases that my faculty have done and downloaded and brought with me, along with, and unfortunately one of my colleagues had to leave, Rob Kanuski, who was at the table just a little while ago, who joined us from the School of Medicine. He's the Associate Director of Information Technology for the College of Medicine, was very helpful in arranging for me to get some of our no longer functioning laptop computers, which we then got to the TechServe group here at Drexel, who then created a way for us to transmit technology in addition. And we carried with us, I think you'll have a picture that Caitlin will show you, and I'll show you as well. We carried with us laptops, which then became integrated into the hospital and also into one of the literary centers. So I really want to thank the WeServe people and the TechServe people. So we have the TechServe guys there. And Rob has also showed me into this room, which is filled to the ceiling with computers, which the College of Medicine pays someone to come take away and discard. Whereas if we have a safe, secure system, we can actually turn those in not only to opportunities for us to work with WeServe globally, but also with our local partners. Because some of the towers and the monitors are better sent to North Philadelphia than to West Africa. I did mention to President Fry at our meeting, we talked about globalization. I told him that I thought we could do well if we went to China. And I came back from China in December, and I agree that the middle class is growing dramatically there. But I think we could do good when we go to Africa, because I think we can share our education with them. I have a couple quick slides. I'm not going to bore you with the details of the emails, but there was a series of emails. I think the important things were that I reached out to the Professor Ka, Mohammed Ka, who was the Chancellor of the University of the Gambia. As it turns out, he has a local connection. He and his wife were professors at Rutgers and lived in South Jersey, about 20 minutes from my house where England and Owen grew up. He's very interested in having a relationship with the University of the Gambia, which is a very young university. So I think there's an opportunity for us to have a bi-directional education. This is his return email. We appreciate your interest. I brought with me a letter from Dean Homan from the College of Medicine, looking forward to us working together. There were several medical students who already participated in We Serve, none who had been to Gambia, and also Dean Parrish, the Dean of Students, had also been participating. So I'm not the only person from the College of Medicine. In fact, another faculty from the College of Medicine, one of our cardiothoracic surgeons, also works here in biomedical engineering. So you, yeah, I'm sorry, nurse. So, and Rob was here before. So you do have, there are other connections besides myself. I also mentioned to Chancellor Cotton was very interested in using simulation as a method of teaching. We have a robust simulation program at Drexel combined with the College of Medicine and School of Nursing. We put on a large transdisciplinary simulation education day. It's a way for people to learn techniques before they then practice on patients. It's a way to teach, also to use distance learning, because we can do simulations over distance. They're very interested in building simulation centers, and interestingly enough, they're looking for partners to help them build the centers to do simulation education, which I think fits very, very well with our other agendas. We did meet, for those of you who haven't had a chance to meet Kiva, that's Kiva right there. And also, that's Mr. Ingom, who's their Director of Protocol, and has about 6 other titles. His job was to welcome us when we arrived. We toured the School of Medicine and the School of Nursing and Midwifery, which is in fact the same building. This building was built in 1853 by the British government when they were the colonial power, and it looks like it was built in 1853, and it in fact is built in 1853. There are, the streets have a very well designed for 1853 open gutters, which have slates over them, many of which are broken. And one of the things in the guidebook it tells you to be careful at night that you don't trip into these open gutters. It is, though the pictures are sometimes quite pretty, like that one, it is a dramatic difference from any hospital that you've been to in the States. It is different than hospitals that I've been to in the Dominican Republic or in China or in South Africa. It is for many and for most of the inhabitants of the Gambia, is a very, very hand-to-mouth existence, extremely rural, and for me, particularly since my interest is in maternal health and in reducing maternal mortality worldwide, an area of the world with a maternal mortality rate in excess of 1,000 women, 100,000 deliveries. To put that into context, the United States, the rate's about 14 per 100,000. So it's a rate not quite 100 times higher than the United States, but one which is a tragedy every single day, and something which I think that we could help with. An example for Drexel is they have transportation problems and they have communication problems. And there's certainly, with the various people in our school, we could help with it. There's also some innovative work that we're doing with the simulation where we can create simulations of human bodies to teach non-physicians how to do like battlefield surgery. In this case, the battlefield would be the maternity unit, but we're working on a simulation to teach the midwives how to do an emergency cesarean section, because Suleiman Junking Hospital is a 2-hour drive from the next place they can do a cesarean delivery, and between the time that they get into the ambulance, if the ambulance is not broken and if they have gas, by the time they get to the hospital, they're going to die. And so we can use current technology we have at Drexel to teach this, and that actually information can be transmitted over a cell phone, so that you can teach battlefield medicine with technology that we have that's currently existing. This is the Royal Victoria Teaching Hospital, which I made sure that we had a chance to visit, so that I came representing the College of Medicine, as well as the opportunity for us to go to Suleiman Junking Hospital. And it is a terribly poor hospital, and I copied a list of their urgent needs. And as far as I can tell, it is every single thing a hospital needs. And it fills a couple of pages. I will tell you one of the depressing things on the far left. At the bottom is mortuary trolleys. I did not show a picture, but as we walk back to the hotel, the coffins are stacked behind the hospital out in the open, and that was relatively depressing for us to walk by. But the oxygen concentrators and the ICU beds and the neonatal beds are incredibly important, and I think Caitlin has something to talk about.